difference between feeling and thinking. And we don't want to conflate the two, because you can change your thoughts, you can change your beliefs, you can change your mind, your ideas, your perceptions, interpretations, but you can't change what you feel. So if you inadvertently say, I feel like, or I feel, and what you mean is you think, or you believe, or it seems, what you've done is you've basically handcuffed yourself from doing anything about it, because you can't change what you feel. And you specifically said these feelings come back, and they're very much feelings that then, if they linger, they turn into moods. And depression is a mood disorder. Anxiety is it's not qualified that way in the book, but it's a mood. Anxiety is a mood. If you're anxious, you're manic, that kind of thing. And I don't mean to conflate those. I know there's people who will pick me apart for that. But the idea is that for the average user, this is a feeling. It's a sensation that goes through your body. Some people can point to it. It's in my stomach, it's in my chest, it's in my head, wherever it is. And it's really important to notice that. So I want to pause there, and then I'll have you elaborate, because I think part of what I want you to do too is for those people who haven't had access to professional services, talk therapy, medication, et cetera, we want them to be able to self-regulate and self-heal. And part of that starts with identification. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, that's great, Erca, how did you know that you were feeling that? This is your opportunity to tell them what kind of flags to look for in the feelings when they come. So explain that, and then I'll have you follow up on the other couple of points.
Sure. So for me personally, the feeling is everything's kind of in my chest. Some people get it kind of like a stomach feeling. I feel a physical sensation in my chest of I can't really breathe very well. It's like a tightening feeling. And then there's also, I can't describe it, but it's something just feels off. Like I don't have the energy that I had before. I don't have the clarity of thinking that I had before. And so it's kind of like maybe not getting enough sleep, that feeling the next day of just kind of feeling off, kind of feeling out of it. But it just kind of lingers, and then it starts getting worse and getting worse and getting worse until the next thing you know, you can't get out of bed, and it's hard to function at all. And so those are the physical sensations, I guess.
Do you notice thought changes, like you start getting negative or resentful or embittered?
Oh, sure. I definitely, you don't find joy in the things that normally were maybe your favorite things. It's just kind of almost like a numbing feeling where you just don't even have the desire to do the things that normally were your favorite things. Or you also have a lot of fear around, for me, I get a lot of social anxiety and social fear. What are people going to think about me? I don't want to talk about my feelings because of fear of what other people are going to think about me. So then it's kind of turns into this self-isolation. That can be another pattern that, again, takes you down that road.
Yeah, you mentioned social anxiety, and I think that it's a common emergence that depression and anxiety walk together. And
sure,
we can have a chicken or egg discussion about which leads the other, but oftentimes I've found that when people present with depressive symptoms, if you just do a little bit more interviewing and dig a little deeper, you find an anxiety disorder that's manifesting the depressive symptoms, because anxiety, which is chiefly rooted in fear, as I teach it, it's a fear of something. It's a fear of being judged, like you mentioned, a fear of failing, fear of success, even sometimes, fear of the future, which is uncertainty, and you're not able to embrace that uncertainty with some peace. So all this fear then leads to almost a paralysis. And from the paralysis, you lead to, well, screw it, why try? I'll just stay where I am, which then leads to the depressive symptoms, because it almost seems at that point like you've quit, right? You've quit trying. And so by the time you get to that point, you present with these depressive symptoms, and it can be quite dangerous if you get prescribed an antidepressant when the underlying problem is anxiety, because it can just exacerbate the anxiety, make the depressive
and I've got stories
worse.
about bad stories with medication for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we can get into that too if you want, because I think it's useful to share that kind of stuff to validate other people's experiences, because you're not alone. Lots of us go through this, and I think if I could highlight a little further, that's the importance of doing a good, thorough biopsychosocial interview with somebody, especially children who, present with depression. Oftentimes it's pressures of school, performance anxiety, perfectionism. Those are all anxious contributors, not necessarily depressive contributors, but they spin themselves into almost like I mentioned before, a paralysis where it's like, I can't decide. And then you just like freeze and decompensate. And then it looks like depression. So, all that isolation and stuff that you mentioned, I can almost hear people in my head who might be listening to this going, well, yeah, that's great. You recognize that there's a change. And that's typically what we as clinicians look for. It's like, well, when did this change and what was the cause of the change? But I can almost hear people saying, well, it doesn't change. It's always been that way. Or I have it all the time. And we start using extreme language like, I just popped out of the womb depressed. Because oftentimes it seems like that. We look back in time and we go, I don't know when it just started. It just always seems like it's been with me. How do you help those people understand that this isn't some cosmic chicken pox that just descends upon us and like seizes us and like we don't have any control over it? And how did you help yourself create the awareness that you have that there is a difference? There is like well, I don't like where I am in a place where I could be, which is where you are now. And now that you've established that, it's easier to discern when you're slipping away and catch yourself, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's taken me 37 years to get to this place. It's like this isn't the first time that I ever felt, oh, maybe I'm getting depressed or something. I have been fortunate enough to have access to mental health care, and I've seen a therapist regularly for years and years and years. And I've been in that place where for years at a time where I just felt like there was no hope and this is just how it is. And I'm damaged, I'm broken. Who's going to want to be with me now? No one's going to want to be my friend, everything from the friend level to the romantic relationship level, who's going to want to be with me? And I wouldn't want to put up with anybody like this. Why would anyone want to put up with me?
Which is self-feeding, by the way. Because you start to get
totally.
You're like, well, now I'm depressed and they don't want to be with me, in addition to all the the false beliefs.
And you just spiral, right? You just spiral and go deeper and deeper and deeper. So I've been there, and sometimes you just got to kind of hit rock bottom, and you have to make the choice. And that's the thing is I've hit those points where I had just had enough, and I didn't want to live that life anymore. And so I took the steps that I at the time thought would help me, and sometimes they didn't. I've had a lot of different therapists that it can take a long time to find the one that you really jive with and vibe with and is really helpful. And so when you spend, even if it's 1 to 10 sessions with someone and it's just not working, and then you got to start all over again, it can be really defeating until you find that person. And I think that I know I have a lot of friends that have said, well, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to have to try to find someone and start all over again. And it's like, you just kind of gotta, I'm here to tell you, you just got to do it.
Yeah, it's a little bit analogous to jobs too, right? You can leave a job or get terminated from a job, and you're like, I don't want to go fill out applications again. It's like, how do you expect to pay for your bills? You got it. You just kind of got it.
And or it's like weight loss, which is another like big journey that I've been on, of gaining a lot of weight in a depressive time. I gained 30 pounds in a year, and
whoa.
I'm 5'4", so I've got a smaller frame. And at my highest weight, I was 160 pounds. And I'd never been that weight before. And I was not taking care of myself at all. And it got to a point where I was just done. Like, I didn't want to feel the way I felt. I didn't want to look the way I looked. And it was just kind of a pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you got to hit the gym. And so it's that same kind of thing. You just got to do it, and you got to put in the work. With mental health, you got to put in the work. It's not just going to be, how long did it take you to get to where you are? It's going to take you some time to dig yourself out, and you don't have to do it alone is the thing.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. It's a great segue into the next point I wanted to circle back to. But before we get there, the commitment issue that you mentioned, when you finally commit, the bootstraps mentality, it's not that, I think we conflate that sometimes with going on one's own way without any assistance. And that's not true. What you cannot do with assistance is decide and commit. That's up to you. And there's an old joke that says, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light bulb has to want to change. And it's funny, but it's also true. I can't make you do anything. You have to make yourself want to do it and then receive the help. And we can talk about vulnerability and the ability, how hard it is to even receive help at some points and, that kind of thing. But what I want to circle back to was in your earlier opening, you said I had to choose. And I thought that was an interesting choice of words, because I talk a lot about people choosing to commit, for example, like we just, discussed, commit to therapy, commit to the process, commit to the change, commit to evolving. When you notice yourself sliding toward depression again, describe the process of that choice and how you make the choice not to go that way or to alter or whatever it is.
Sure. So this most recent time, which is, just a couple weeks ago in quarantine, I was going through what kind of everybody was going through, fear of losing a job. Like I said, my job works with cruise ships that are coming to Alaska. Well, no cruise ships are coming to Alaska until, as of now, July 1st, and that could change. Some have canceled their Alaska programs altogether. So my job is safe for now, but I don't know for how long. So, there's the fear of losing your job. There's just the fear of society in general, like what's going to happen, when are we going to get back to normal, what will be the new normal, and this whole, again, it's kind of that spiral. Plus you're alone in isolation. And I definitely, I had, I think also, like most people going into quarantine, like I'm going to do all these productive things, I'm going to have all this extra time on my hands, I'm going to take up a new hobby or read that book, and so you know what? None of that happened.
Yep.
For
Nope.
sure.
I'm still waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen. Did I have days where I got out of bed, went to the couch, spent 8 hours on the couch, went back to bed? Yeah. Did I have days where I started drinking before lunch? Because what else am I going to do? Totally. Yeah, I did. And, but after a while, I was like, all right, I can't keep going down this road. And it kind of turned into a running joke with my friends was, because we still were very connected via group texts or Zoom calls or phone calls, FaceTime, whatever. And the running joke just kind of turned into like, forget this day, tomorrow's a new day. And so I just tried to kind of get in that mentality of, this was just one day. Tomorrow is a new day, as kind of silly or cliche as that sounds. And then I would, like I said, I had to make that choice. So things that I would choose was to not sit on the couch all day, get out and exercise, which is hard in Alaska in March because it's ice outside and 20 and 30 degrees. And well, we're starting to get, in March, we're gaining a lot of daylight. So it was light out, but it was just cloudy and gloomy and cold and gross outside. But it's like, you know what, I just got to get out there. I'm going to do it. And so it's, I'm going to buy healthy groceries and I'm going to eat good food. It's those kinds of things rather than choosing the other way, which I know will take me to a certain place. And then I will say a big thing too that's helped is the weather here. Now the snow has melted, it changes really fast. So like spring is here and we've got a lot of daylight. I think the sun's going down at like 9:30 now, maybe close to 10ish. Wow. So we've got all this extra daylight now, which is definitely a mood booster. But yeah, I know again from my past, if I don't choose the right things to nourish my body food wise, exercise wise, that I will go down that path. And to not fixate on, well, this was this day, I'm just giving up. I'm just going to keep, say tomorrow's a new day, but still just keep doing the same thing, is where I made that choice. And so I'm trying to think of, it can be small changes, I think is the other thing. It doesn't have to be like, okay, well now the next day I have 50 things on my to-do list and I'm going to get all these things done, because it's being realistic is what I'm trying to say about what the changes you're going to make and what you're going to get done or how you're going to do things. And it's those little tiny changes that then in time add up to the big change. And then it's kind of, before you know it, you're like, oh, I'm out. I made it. And that's taken me a long time to kind of recognize that, on how to get out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's an analogy I use frequently that says, just because you walked 20 miles off a path and you're stuck in the middle of a forest, even though you wanted to be at a lake,